Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at the newest game from Bezier Games. We're going to take a look at Favor of the Pharaoh, which from my understanding is a remake of a game called To Court the King, which I have not played, so you won't be getting a comparison to that game. You'll just be getting the uninfluenced review of the game itself. But this is a design by Tom Lehman of Race for the Galaxy or Roll for the Galaxy, or a variety of other games that you're probably familiar with. But real quick, we're going to take a look at what you get inside of this box. We'll see how the dice rolling plays out, and then we'll get to the end and we'll get my opinions of Favor of the Pharaoh. So here you can see Favor of the Pharaoh all set up what would be a 4-player game. You can tell it's a 4-player game because some of these piles have 4 tiles in them. In fewer player games, some of the tiles have fewer tiles in them, and that is what will change the player number. But the number of different groups of tiles out here will never change. Now, in these tiles, you'll see that there are different levels of tiles. There are 3 dice tiles, 4 dice tiles, 5 dice tiles, 6 dice tiles, and 7 dice tiles. That means you must spend at least that many dice from your locked dice, or use that many locked dice to purchase these. So you'll need to use at least 3 to purchase any of these bottom ones, and at least 7 to purchase any of the top ones. Additionally, you see there are different colors of tiles. There are yellow, blue, and red tiles. Both yellow and blue tiles will be once per turn uses, so every time you get a turn, you may use these dice. The red tiles will be once per game, so you're only going to get to use those once a game, and then it'll flip over and be inactive. You'll also see at the top here we have a herder tile. This is kind of the consolation prize. If you don't roll any of the combinations needed to buy any of the other tiles, you can always take a herder. It's not great, but it's an option. You'll also see that our player here has a start player tile. There will be either the start player tile, which indicates the first player, or it will just say start on it. Anyhow, they're all the same. One just indicates who starts the game. A pyramid, which is where you will lock your dice or indicate how many dice you've rolled for the end of the game. And then a bunch of dice and some tokens. These scarab tokens are things that you can acquire throughout the game or at the start of the game if you're not the first player. And there are 2 types of them, if I can find one of the others. The 2 types are +1 pip, which can be discarded to add a pip to one of your dice, making a 5 into a 6 or a 1 into a 2. And the other type here is the re-roll a die, an individual die. So you can spend these to re-roll one of your dice in hopes of getting a number that's usable. The way this game is going to play is that you're going to, at the start of your turn, pick up all of the dice that you get. So you'll see at the start of the game I get 3 red dice, and I would roll them. So when I roll these, I'm going to be looking for sets. Each tile out here has a different set that you can use to purchase it. For example, this tile here, the worker, can be bought with 3 of a kind. This tile here, the farmer, can be bought with a pair, but you must have locked at least 3 dice. The all evens can of course be bought if you have all even dice that are locked. And the 10 plus would require that your at least 3 dice add up to more than 10. So, let's say that I'm trying to get the 3 of a kind. Right now I've not rolled any matching, but I'm going to take the 6 because it also gives me the best chance of getting a 10 plus, and it's an even die, so it works out quite well for me. Every time I roll my dice, I must lock at least 1 die, and we'll see that since I've locked 1, I can now pick up my other 2 dice and roll them again. If I'd wanted, I could have locked more. For example, I could lock the 4 and the 2, which would either give me 10 plus or all even, but does not give me pair or 3 of a kind. So, I'm going to roll again, and we'll see that I get 2 2s. Well, I now know at this point that I'm not going to get 3 of a kind. It's not possible. I can get a pair, I can get all even, and I can get 10 plus because I already have it with my current dice. So maybe I just decide to lock both of those and be done. From the bottom 3 dice now, I can pick up any of those that I want. So for example, let's say that I've decided that I would like to use the pair that I think is the best benefit for me. When I buy this, I'm going to place it into my area. There's now 1 fewer of these for other people to buy, but there's 4 of them, so every player in the game can have 1. But next round, you'll see instead of getting 3 dice, I'm going to get 4. So that's good for me, and then I would pass the turn to the next player who would start their turn. So that's basically the flow of the game, and the game will go on in this manner until somebody buys the queen here, which requires 7 of a kind. And when they do this, they're going to take this and they'll take the tile, and they're going to mark on their board what 7 of a kind they had, or if they had more than 7 of a kind and used it to buy it, what 8 or 9 of a kind they had. And so they'll take this and they'll say maybe I had 6s and I had 7 6s. You'll see the 7 and the 6 right there that I used to buy this. From that point, everybody else that hasn't already had their turn in the round, meaning anybody that's after the start player that hasn't already had their turn, is going to go ahead and get a chance to beat that roll. So in order to beat 7 6s, you're going to need at least 8 1s. Could be 8 6s, could be 8 1s, doesn't matter. But you're trying to beat the 7 6s. And if you do so, you'll take the Pharaoh from that player. However, if anybody beats the player that triggered the end of the game, that player that triggered the end gets one more chance to outroll whoever is beating them to see if they can win. And whoever has the Pharaoh at the end of the game by rolling the highest number will win. So you'll see that it really comes down to accelerating, getting enough dice to buy the 7 of a kind, but of course having enough dice to beat 7 of a kind even if somebody else buys it, and then if you get beaten, to beat that person. Now, just real quickly, we'll cover some of the tiles because they're important to see, but note that there are more tiles that you'll get when you randomize the game. This is just the starting setup for your first game. So, for example, this one here actually gives you a die of value 1 that you can bring in whenever you want after a roll. That doesn't mean you have to keep it as a 1, you can still re-roll it, but if you need a 1, you can bring it in and lock it immediately. Gives you an extra die. This one will give you +1, 2, or 3 pips to a die every turn, so you can make one die higher by 1, 2, or 3 pips. This one here says that you can take another turn immediately with 1 fewer dice, red dice, so you can use this once per game to take an extra turn. The blue dice are different than the red dice. So a blue die here has most of the same sides as a red die, but you'll see that there's this little star symbol on the one side. This star symbol means that you can set any die, including this one, to whatever face you would like after rolling this symbol. So if I really needed a 6 and I rolled these 2 dice together, I could set this die to a 6 and then lock it if I wanted. I could then still re-roll the blue die, so it's very useful. This one simply gets you a scarab every turn, but also gets you a white die, which after rolling must be locked immediately. Well, not immediately. You can still adjust it using tokens or re-roll it using tokens, but by the end of the turn that you roll it the first time, it must be locked. So they're called instant dice. These ones are going to allow you to flip faces on dice or get you 2 dice for 1 turn, a die that comes in as a 5, or a green die. And the green die is very similar to the blue die, except for it has 2 of those place any die on any face symbols. This one is set a die to any face. This one is get 5 scarabs, a die that comes in as a 6, a red and a white die. This one is split any 1 die into 2 white dice that happen to be the same value added together as the 1 die that you rolled. Some tiles will let you buy multiple tiles on a turn, and then of course you have the tile that ends the game, a tile that's worth 2 dice every turn. This is add 1 or 2 pips to a die. And then we have claim any tile, blue or yellow, that is less than level 7, or 7 or less, or say 6 or less, and take another turn. So once per game. Again, you'll play until somebody buys this queen, do the final round, and whoever has the Pharaoh at the end of the game will be the winner. Note that there are a couple of extra dice, surf dice, and this black die here that have different faces on them that can either give you more dice or re-rolls or simply do nothing. And then a couple of dice that have different levels on them. So this orange one is only 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and the yellow one is only 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, so this is only high values. So you can get different dice and different tiles to have different games each time. And there you have it. That is Favor of the Pharaoh from Bezier Games and super famous designer Tom Lehman. The game itself, what do I think of it? Well, the game is, of course, a dice rolling game. So, as many of you probably know, I'm not a huge fan of chucking a lot of dice, despite being on the dice tower. This is because frequently it comes out to be pretty random, right? With random rolling, random results often happen, and that is not necessarily the case in Favor of the Pharaoh. Yes, you do roll a handful of random dice, but with all of the modifications you can make, be it the +1 pip chits or the reroll chits, simply the fact that you only have to lock 1 die each roll, or even the dice that give you the ability to set things to particular faces, or even bring in dice as a particular face, reduces the randomness quite a bit and makes this bearable for me. Not just bearable, I actually rather enjoy it. The game is pretty good. Overall, I would say that I enjoy it quite a bit. The reasons being that it's fast. It's not totally random. It's definitely a good amount of randomness to it, but it's mitigatable. And the end. Well, actually, the end is probably the part that I enjoy the least. It comes on rather fast. Sometimes it can be, predicted, but sometimes it's just boom. The game is over. Somebody gets the 7 of a kind they need in order to get the queen. And the kind of last round of play is a little strange to me as well. Who can roll better than the person who triggered the end of the game? And if they do roll better, they win, even though the person who triggered the end of the game gets one more try. Overall, though, enjoyable. The extra tiles make it really nice. The randomization aspect at the beginning of the game makes the gameplay different from time to time. But all in all, it's pretty easy to remember the rules. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That is Favor of the Pharaoh from Bezier Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.